The year was 2017. England had recently become a city, people started attending a totally normal literature club, Uganda Knuckles started asking for directions, and today's protagonist, Shackled Spirit, was about to attend a local Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. Now this wasn't Shaq's first event, as he'd been to a few tournaments before, but each of those tournaments had required a significant drive in order to attend, as they were all in different cities at least an hour or two away. But today was going to be different, as Shaq had recently learnt of a local card shop that had started hosting Yu-Gi-Oh events. So he decided screw it, why not save some money on fuel and try out this new place instead. So he hopped in his car and headed for the store. Now Shaq wasn't exactly considered a competitive player. He wasn't new to the game, but at the same time, he also wasn't exactly very good. He was the very definition of a casual player, and just like all casual players, he only really had one deck on his mind: Blue Eyes. This was even more heavily enforced by the fact that Shining Spirits had only just released a year prior, which is a pack containing some very much needed support for the Blue Eyes art type, that took the deck from being a load of steaming hot garbage to a World Championship winning deck. And this was the first time Shaq had gotten his hands on the brand new cards, so he was excited to try them out. This story begins during the final round of this event. It was only a small tournament consisting of 3 rounds, and although Shaq no longer had any chance to win the event, he had still managed to keep a dead even scoreline of 1 win and 1 loss, so he wanted to try to end the day with a positive record. Shaq took a look at the pairings before walking over to his table and taking a seat. A few moments go by before he notices a couple of guys having a bit of a chat and approaching the table, one of which takes a seat across from him, whilst the other stood behind. Now, as this was only a small tournament, it wasn't exactly rare for people to have their friends come over and watch their games. Just as long as there wasn't any backseating going on, nobody really cared. So after exchanging some greetings, both players prepared to begin their match. Game 1. This game wasn't exactly very interesting, as it ended up being pretty one-sided, basically just big dudes smacks face until number reached 0, so we're just gonna skip straight to game 2. Shaq was going first, and picked up 5 cards to form his starting hand, before letting off a bit of a sigh. He had drawn his only copy of Dragon Spirit of White, which typically is a card he preferred to keep in his deck to summon later on. Thankfully though, his hand wasn't a complete dud, as he'd also drawn both Cards of Consonance and the White Stone of Ancients. Cards of Consonance simply allows the player to discard 1 Dragon Tuner with 1000 less attack to draw 2 cards, and Stone happened to be the perfect card to fulfill those conditions. So after pitching the Stone to the graveyard and drawing a couple of cards, he managed to end his turn on a Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, which isn't exactly the craziest end field, but at least it was something. Now during the end phase of this turn, the White Stone of Ancients effect activates. If this card was sent to the graveyard this turn, the player may special summon 1 Blue Eyes monster from their deck. So after declaring the effect, Shaq picked up his deck and began sifting through it for a Blue Eyes monster. Normally at this point, Shaq would summon out Spirit of White, as its effect treats it as a Blue Eyes monster, but unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, he'd drawn his only copy, so he was forced to simply summon out a plain old boring Blue Eyes White dragon to the field. What are you doing? Shaq slowly raised his head. His opponent was now pointing directly at the Blue Eyes on the field. You can't summon that. Huh? For the next 15 seconds, Shaq searched his field, his graveyard, his opponent's field, his opponent's graveyard, basically anywhere searching for some kind of restriction or card, basically anything that prevents him from summoning that Blue Eyes to the field. And upon failing to do so, warily asked, why not? His opponent then responded, because Blue Eyes is not a Blue Eyes monster. Excuse me? Did he just say Blue Eyes is not a Blue Eyes monster? He's right, you can't summon that. Shaq, now completely brain broken at this point, looked over his opponent's shoulder to see yet another person repeat the same sentence. Blue Eyes isn't a Blue Eyes monster, you know. At this point, Shaq immediately raised his arm to call over a judge. A few moments go by before the judge waltzes on over to the table. How you doing, guys? What seems to be the problem? Shaq simply extends his arm to point at the dragon on the table. Is this card a Blue Eyes monster? The judge looked at the card and raised an eyebrow before swiveling his head between the two players as if to check he wasn't being pranked. Is Blue Eyes White Dragon a Blue Eyes monster? Both players remained completely silent and just stared, patiently waiting for an answer. Yes, Blue Eyes White Dragon is in fact a Blue Eyes monster. Shaq's opponent clearly didn't like this answer and immediately started trying to argue with the judge, claiming the only monster he'd ever seen summoned via stone was Spirit of White, so this couldn't possibly be true. The judge simply pointed the card and asked the opponent, "Sir, would you mind slowly reading the name of this monster?" The opponent didn't respond and fell completely silent. Alright, if that's all then, the judge said as he straightened himself up before turning around and walking away from the table. And that is going to mark the end of today's tale. Now, I thought it'd be fun to have a bit of a guess as to what actually happened here, and I personally think the opponent just read the first line of Spirit of White that states this card is always treated as a Blue Eyes card, and assumed that because Blue Eyes itself didn't have this line of text, that it wasn't treated as a Blue Eyes or something. Honestly, what actually went through that guy's head, who knows, but feel free to leave your guesses in the comments below. For those curious, unfortunately Shaq did go on to lose that game, but I really don't think he minded considering the absolute banger of a story he got out of it. Thank you so much Shackled Spirit for sharing your story in the comment section of one of my previous videos. And as per usual, if you too have a story or tale from your time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And would like to have it recreated in this series, feel free to write it down in the comments below. Just make sure to leave enough detail and context so I can turn it into a full video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like to see more stories just like this one, I've created a full playlist of this series, which I'll leave at the top of the description, or you can click that little card on screen right now. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Laters.